Commission for January the 15th, 2020 are called to order concurrently at 6:12 p.m. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. And we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Commissioner Ortiz.
Hands over your heart, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oral communications. Please note the rules for meeting decorum on the screen. In the interest of time, these will not be read, but be advised that the Planning Commission will adhere to these standards. This is a time for the public to address the Planning Commission and the Airport Zoning Commission for items not on the agenda. Please note that if an item is scheduled as a public hearing, you will have an additional opportunity to speak when the public hearing is opened or continued. Comments made now regarding items scheduled for a public hearing will not be included in the official record of public testimony for that item. So if anyone would like to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda, please come up to the podium. Please address your comments to the commission as a body and not to individual commissioners directly. Only very brief responses may be given to questions asked on topics not on the agenda. Please keep remarks to 3 minutes. Anybody like to come up to speak? No one? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll close oral communications.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, if you can go back and we'll have roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call. I was in a hurry.
We're already late.
Chairperson Smith,
Present.
Vice Chair El Shanable,
Present.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Present.
Commissioner Caraveo,
Present.
Commissioner Richard is absent today.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. Consideration of Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission minutes for the regular meeting of September 4th, 2019. Is there a motion?
Going to have to abstain.
Hmm?
I'm abstaining. So.
Motion to approve?
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, are you abstaining?
Yes, I'm abstaining.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Consideration of Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission minutes for the regular meeting of October the 2nd, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any abstaining?
Yes, I'll abstain.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passed. Consideration of Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission minutes for the regular meeting of October the 16th, 2019. Do I have
Motion
a
to
motion?
approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Anyone abstaining? No. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Chairperson, if we could just have it on the record that you also voted aye.
Oh,
I
I'm
think we
sorry.
heard typically we do the roll call, but this is fine, it's just minutes. But
Oh.
just to clarify, it was approvals from the other commissioners as well as yourself. Okay, that's fine. And if you'd like, we can go ahead and do the roll call for,
Okay. the next
any
one,
other
we'll
minutes?
do the roll call.
yeah.
Consideration of Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission minutes for the regular meeting of November the 6th, 2019. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have,
Chairperson Smith,
yes.
Vice Chair El Shanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caraveo.
Yes.
Commissioner Richard is absent. Motion passes 4.
Okay, thank you. We'll now recess the Airport Zoning Commission, and we'll go to the Planning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. Continued public hearing. Zone Text Amendment 2019-ZA05. Now is the time and place to open the public hearing to consider Zone Text Amendment number 2019-ZA05. Associate Planner Maria Majeric will present a staff report.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to point out that several electronic email communication comments were received. They were forwarded to each chairperson on the commission or each member of the commission. Hard copies have been printed out and provided to you up here on the dais. I would like to remind the commission and the audience that currently STRs are prohibited in the city of Hawthorne, and that the ordinance being presented to you allows for STRs with regulations. And I think that was misinterpreted in some of the communications.
Right. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will be presenting a very short presentation in regards to short-term rentals. As you know, the purpose of the Zone Text Amendment is to establish the regulations to permit short-term rentals, as our director has just mentioned, in the city of Hawthorne. We have detailed many of the regulations within our staff reports and the resolution and the ordinance that will potentially go to the City Council. On October 16th of 2019, we provided a workshop to the commission and also to the residents in order to educate everyone a little bit as to what a short-term rental was and wasn't. Then on December 18th, we presented the Planning Commission with a proposed ordinance to take to the City Council. There, the Commission established a few other regulations or changes that they wanted to see and clarifications. So based on that, these are the regulations that we presented. So first of all, why regulate? It's to preserve the residential character of the neighborhood through operating standards, to provide a means to track short-term rentals and enforce the requirements that we are proposing within the ordinance that is presented to you. It does ensure the appropriate collection of TOT taxes, which are transient occupancy taxes, and it does provide an opportunity to individuals to have an additional source of income. So the intention is not to prevent them, the intention is to actually permit them in the city of Hawthorne. And it does create an alternative short-term lodging. The reason for some of the regulations and limitations is to ensure that there is housing stock in the city and it doesn't negatively affect the community, specifically affordable housing such as accessory dwelling units. So where will we permit these? We will permit them in residential, commercial, and industrial zones, but only for those dwellings that were created legally. So what types of units are we going to allow these in? Single-family dwellings, which are no more than 4 units. Apartments, condominiums, and some non-conforming structures, which are residential units in our commercial and industrial zones. The one thing that we won't allow are vacation rentals. These will be prohibited throughout the city, specifically in commercial and industrial zones. The vacation rentals will only be allowed up to 90 days. Let me see here. Okay. So, as I mentioned, the prohibited units are the Section 8 housing, accessory dwelling units, and properties with more than 4 units, for example, apartment buildings. Those are the units that we won't allow short-term rentals. And in terms of parcels, per the direction of the Planning Commission, we'll allow them in single-family homes, so long as they're hosted or unhosted. In a duplex, only 1 unit maximum. In a triplex, only 2 units maximum, and that is the same for planned unit developments and multifamily developments with not more than 4 units. So the maximum that can be categorized as short-term rentals will be 2 units. The operational requirements that we have spelled out in the ordinance and in the staff report, we will only allow 1 short-term rental period, which means only 1 reservation, 1 stay, 1 booking by guest per resident per night. We're going to have limits on the number of guests, 2 per bedroom. Short-term rentals will only be permitted within approved residential uses, meaning that the garages, especially if they're not residential, will not be permitted. Some garages have been converted to accessory dwelling units, but those we're prohibiting. And also trailers. You can't rent one of the units as a short-term rental and then bring a trailer onto the site to rent. There will be no advertising on site. We will not permit functions such as weddings, corporate events, commercial functions. Those types of functions that will generate a lot of traffic, a lot of people on a site, which might cause issues for the rest of the community. We will be requiring that the dwelling be maintained in compliance with federal, state, and local laws. And we are going to require parking, 1 for the host and 1 for the guest. So there isn't any issues in terms of the parking in the surrounding neighborhood. The hosting platform, we are requiring them to disclose the listings to the city for purposes of obtaining the TOT taxes and business license requirements, because they will need to obtain a business license. These are just some of the slides that you had seen before in terms of what we've talked about, the performance standards, quiet hours, those sorts of things. As we had mentioned, most of the cities surrounding us have prohibited these uses. The majority of the cities are in our surrounding area, such as Lawndale, Gardena, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, Carson. Some are in the process of potentially permitting them, such as Torrance and El Segundo, but with regulations. And the regulations that we have described in our staff report in the ordinance do mirror some of the regulations that are currently established. And there is nothing unusual about the regulations, as you know, and per your direction, staff would like you to approve based on the information you provided us, so we can take this to the City Council. And that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Does the Planning Commission have any questions for the staff? This is the time for questions of staff only. No. Okay. So there is no applicant. Is there anyone who wishes to address the commission on this issue? If you do, please come up to the podium. Tell us your name and please speak into the microphone so we can hear you.
Yes, Lucy Ravitch in the Ramona track. So I appreciate and applaud that you've been working hard on this, especially the staff in the planning department. There are a few issues that I still see. I had brought it up last time in operational requirements, number F with the logbook, where most of them are okay, but it's hard to get a home address for the people that come and visit. We're not provided that with the hosting platform. However, if the police were ever to need to investigate, I'm sure the hosting platform would comply. But if we could take off the home address, I'd really appreciate that, because I do want to comply with all of the rules. And then the other thing that I thought was a little bit, if you might reconsider the enforcement it says any person who violates the provision of this chapter shall be guilty of a misdemeanor punishable by a fine not exceeding $1,000, imprisonment for a term not to exceed 6 months. I think 6 months in prison is a little bit harsh, but I mean, it's up to you guys. But those were my main things. Also, there was one other. It was about the insurance. If it really needs to be that high of like $2 million of insurance, and that's all. Thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, everyone. My name is Felipe, and I own a single-family house in Hawthorne. I'm a taxpayer. I'm an honest guy, hard work. Me and my wife, we decided to do Airbnb because we're planning on having a baby, and now she's pregnant. So the Airbnb is an extra source of income. She'll be able to be with our baby and all. And we are doing the Airbnb in our mother-in-law guest house. It's a single-family house with a mother-in-law guest house. I would like to ask how it's going to be, because it seems that accessory buildings won't be allowed, but in this case, it's a mother-in-law. It's a huge lot. How it's going to be? May I ask you?
Mr. Secretary, would you like to answer that question?
So we have a definition for accessory dwelling units. And if these are defined as such, those are the ones that would not be permitted for short-term rentals. For instance, those that required a covenant in the last few years. And in the code, it specified that those second units could not be rented separately. And there's covenants, and so there's restrictions already on that. We'd have to take a look at each individual property to ensure that those are not defined as accessory dwelling units. The new ones that are coming through this year with the new state regulations are, we will know which ones are specifically accessory dwelling units. And so they follow the state regulations, and they will be noted as well. So those will not be permitted.
So in my case, I have a 2-car garage, plus I built a additional 2-car space for the Airbnb guests. And in order to not disrupt the parking in the street, and also the single-family house would continue to have its own parking.
So we'd have to look at your individual property to ensure that it's not defined as an ADU. So if you'd like, you can contact staff either tomorrow or next week, and we'll certainly help you and assist you with that and to make sure.
I see. And in the worst case scenario, would I be able to move it there and then do on my main house?
It's probably best that you just
That's-
contact us.
okay.
Yeah, because it's a little specific. So we don't want to give you the wrong information. So contact staff tomorrow or your earliest convenience, and we'll
Will do.
look at that for you.
So another question, the insurance is for $2 million. It's hard to find a house in Hawthorne that costs over $1 million. And Airbnb assure us a $1 million insurance on the platform. So if anything is beyond that, I don't see the reason, I don't see the point of doing that, because that's going to be really costly and unpractical to have it. So it's pretty much just telling us, you guys can't do Airbnb here in the city because it's going to be very expensive and non-operational. And the information, as my colleague mentioned, is quite excessive because the platform makes it safe and easy to use. And if you need to engage with the guests and ask for private information like that, it's going to be a list of concerns that's going to rise about us having their private information like that. They are assured by the website that they're safe, they have their IDs, and they are checked, so we don't need to do that with them. Another concern, Airbnb usually schedules 6 months in advance. So if any change, we would need at least 6 months in order to adapt to the new change. In my case, I do 3 months in advance. So I would need at least 3 months, because if I need to do cancellations with all my guests, it would put me out of business, because my reputation would be so bad that nobody would rent from me anymore. So another, just for statistics, there are entire house doing Airbnb in Hawthorne. And we have over 80,000 people in Hawthorne, so it's 1 for every 1,000. So I don't think this affects the homeless at all. Doesn't affect the economics. It's very minor. I'm in favor for organizing and creating standards. An idea I have for standards, having standard on the main Hawthorne Street with the commerce. They would have, if they had standard, we would bring more tourists to the city, more money, more everything, more revenue, more property value. So if you're talking about standard, let's see the macro picture here. You know what I mean? Not only being like enforcing the little guys, because we're pretty small operation. And yeah, that's about it. You guys have any questions for me?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, so I'm back. Valentin Hernandez from North Hawthorne. I just want to, I guess, ask about why pretty much the vacation homes are going to be prohibited. Have there been any problems, any issues with those? And also regarding the regulations, is I guess as we spoke on the very first meeting, not to go too hard on the regulations if no big issues had happened. I guess, give us the opportunity, and if, like I guess the standard regulations would be definitely very reasonable. But regarding the log, regarding all the information that we need to collect from our guests, also the insurance, and again, the vacation homes, that looks like too much too soon, since as far as I know, the Airbnb hasn't caused any negative impact in the city. I think it would be actually like the opposite, because we bring a lot of visitors, tourists. They shop, they dine, they ordered a lot of Uber Eats. So I mean, they're bringing revenue and all of that. So again, just reconsider the vacation rental if there has not been any issues, because as the guy before me said, it's very few of us who are doing it, and I don't think that's going to cause or that's going to make a big impact on the shortage of housing. I'm pretty sure there's some other issues in the city that are impacting the city in a negative way, with buildings being empty for many years and things like that. So I guess, do not punish the homeowners who are doing everything the right way and not causing any trouble. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? Good evening, guys. My name is Jahan. I'm a local real estate broker. And my question is, why are ADUs being restricted? And when it comes to, I guess, this short-term rental and this source of income, low to moderate income purchasers, from my experience, are not necessarily, especially with the prices as they are, they're not as, it's not as affordable for them to get 2 and 3 unit and 4 unit buildings. And so they're all essentially locked out of that extra source of income that might help them afford their house. Furthermore, if people are saying no to the ADUs and yes to the units, I don't think that's going to help the housing crisis. I think it would hurt it, because now people might, park a relative in one unit and reserve the other units for short-term rentals, as opposed to renting them out to people who actually need a place to stay for a long-term situation. So is there a reason? First meeting, I'm just curious as why the ADUs are being locked out.
Through the chair. The reason for the restriction on accessory dwelling units is that the intention of accessory dwelling units is to provide more housing and affordable housing to residents throughout the state of California. And therefore, the state of California has actually permitted cities to place restrictions in not allowing those units to be taken away from the housing stock and turning them into short-term rentals. That is the purpose of the restrictions for accessory dwelling units.
Okay. Do you see that it could happen, that somebody might that can afford a 4-unit building, and maybe it's not even a residence. You know, they would look at it as an investment to buy a 3 or 4-unit building, keep it empty, and do short-term rentals, keeping maybe 2 or 3 families out of that. It's just a thought, But I guess that was the main question. You did address it, but that was my thought behind it. Okay, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Ingrid Vasquez, and I am a resident of Hawthorne. I'm a fairly new resident here. What brought me here is actually the housing crisis. I was homeless with my mom, my husband, and my child until someone moved out of my uncle's house where I live now, and we were able to rent out the back house and use the front house as an Airbnb. I will reiterate what some of my good neighbors have said, that it does bring a lot of business to the community, to the city. My guests have often commented on Airbnb that, for example, Palermo Pizza is the best pizza they've ever had, or that Superior Market has really good groceries. We are creating income not for ourselves. Like I said, I was homeless before I came to Hawthorne. If I lose my Airbnb, I will again be homeless. So I'm looking at all of you. I don't know if you feel comfortable about putting a 60-year-old woman, her daughter, her husband, and my 2-year-old baby back out on the street if this is not allowed to happen. We are doing our best, I think, as hosts, because we want to generate income for ourselves and for the community. I have great reviews, and I work really hard to keep it clean and keep it nice and to have a structured environment inside the house and the rules. We list no parties, no smoking. We're very specific, not only because we want to keep a good business, because we want to keep our community safe and our neighborhoods nice and clean. I do appreciate everything that's been happening. I know that this is not being allowed in other cities or not even being considered. So I really do appreciate all of your hard work, and thank you for allowing us to come here and share our thoughts and our personal stories. So thank you again.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Monisha Satterfield, and I am also a resident of Hawthorne. I agree also with the neighbors, specifically because my children and I would have also been homeless had I not moved into my garage and rented my rooms as Airbnb. Not every Airbnb is for parties or large gatherings. I actually happen to house students who can't afford on-campus housing at USC or UCLA or even the Loyola campus. When they can't afford housing, they stay in the rooms that I provide. So if we discontinue the short-term rentals, they can only go semester by semester until they figure out what their status is or if they're able to get on-campus housing. And I think that if we discontinue that, then it creates a problem not just for those that are looking for a roof over their head, but those that are trying to accomplish higher education as well. So I'd like for you guys to reconsider the fines, the insurance, and some of the other regulations that seem to be a little bit inflated, because we won't be able to afford our homes and keep a roof over our head for our families, or even provide help for other people who do need the short-term housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi. Thank you guys for taking your time on this issue. My husband and I have been residents in Hawthorne for 17 years. We bought property in May of 2016. We're owner occupied, and we do short-term rental our other units. There's a few, this is my first meeting. I've gotten several emails and stuff that I'm trying to become familiar with exactly what the regulations might be or might not be. With the insurance part of it, most insurance companies don't recognize vacation rental. Like for myself, I can't get an umbrella policy to have more coverage on our property because they don't recognize short-term rentals. Airbnb does offer the $1 million policy plus whatever homeowners insurance we have on our property. So the $2 million thing is a bit steep. I'm all for regulating it as far as, commercial apartment buildings and things I don't think should be allowed just because of the other tenants that live there. If they are allowed, I think there should be regulations as far as owners being completely responsible for their property. The occupancy, the parking, all of that I'm in agreement with. The insurance is a bit steep. Also, I'm not positive with the 90-day period is for renting per year, if that's strictly for single-family homes or exactly how that works. As far as I can tell you it brings tons of business to the city of Hawthorne. I think that there's things that are coming to Hawthorne with the stadium in such close proximity to us. I can tell you that there's definitely not going to be enough lodging for all of the people that are going to be coming to this area in the next 2 years with the stadium, and Hawthorne is going to get hit extremely hard because of the close proximity, and the little small amount of Airbnbs that are here are going to be, the hotels, everything are going to be booked to capacity. Like I said, I do think that it needs to be regulated, and I appreciate your guys' consideration and time on keeping this not just shutting us down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
To the last speaker, if she wishes to provide her name for the record. Yes. Go ahead and please indicate your name.
My name is Chris White.
Go ahead, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gladys. I live on Cerise Avenue, and I want to thank you for this platform so that everyone can share their opinions. I did meet with Maria, and she was very helpful in giving me information on Airbnb. I used to live in El Segundo, and then I was one of the families or single mothers that finally reached the experience of having your rent go up and up and up in El Segundo, elsewhere, like many people are experiencing. And the inventory of housing is so expensive that people have a hard time to move. I looked into Hawthorne because of the potential of the corporation and businesses coming here. For example, Tesla, Solar Tesla now is having their business here. As the previous speaker said, the SoFi Stadium, all the business coming. So I chose Hawthorne. I looked at different cities. I'm a first-time home buyer. The reason I moved into Hawthorne was because of the potential business, and I would encourage everyone to consider what the speakers here said, because a single mother like me and others that I know of, the potential of having an Airbnb in the future was something I wanted to do. That's why I moved into Hawthorne. So I hope you consider the Airbnb folks that are trying to be entrepreneurial at the same time support their families. Secondly, I do want to touch upon the point about homelessness. I work in a hospital. I'm a nurse, and we've seen at least 13% increase in just LA with homelessness in the city and the streets. The homeless patients, for many reasons, don't want to be there, but we have them. The student, especially what she was saying, this is an article from April of 2019 with LAUSD's number of homeless students jumping by more than 1,000 since November. Local and state response grows, and it goes on about what people are doing. There's at least 17,494 homeless students as of Tuesday, and this article was written, like I said, in I think April. The number keeps going up, and these are young students that cannot afford campus, and they seek out Airbnb not only in Hawthorne, obviously, but in other cities. And I think that young folks trying to educate themselves and literally live in vans at USC. They shower at the gym, and they go to class and then they go back and sleep. They've created a community of their own because they are homeless, but they want to focus on their education. And I think that if they spread out of LA, downtown LA where I work, into other cities, and if we can offer a nice home and a humble abode to them, if need be, I think it's a good thing. And I think those were the only two things I wanted to say. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Okay, Mr. Secretary, are there any documents to place into the administrative record, such as late communications?
Mr. Chair, there are no further documents other than what was already provided.
Thank you. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any final comments on this item or questions from staff?
Yes. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate you guys and your thoughts and your concerns. I just want to, make sure it's clear that short-term rentals are for rentals that are less than 30 days. So if you're renting out your property for more than 30 days, this doesn't concern you. You're allowed to do that. This is for short-term, which is less than 30 days. For our previous meetings, we do see the need for short-term rental, and that's why we're creating this code to allow for it. So we're not, against short-term rentals, just making sure that it is done and it is managed properly through our code, and that we allow for it. So I just wanted to start off by, giving you guys that information. Some people asked about ADUs. It's actually a state ordinance that doesn't allow for ADUs to be utilized as short-term rentals. The ADU ordinance was created to kind of get rid of the homelessness and all of what you guys have mentioned. So that's why it's restricted. Short-term rental is restricted to not be used for ADUs. Vacation rentals, somebody said that we're not allowing for vacation rentals. We are allowed for vacation rentals, but it's for 90 days. I believe we mentioned this before and said that this could be like a trial period just to see if we can allow it for longer. And I also want to see if we can reduce the insurance to the 1 million. I believe somebody said that Airbnb allows for that. And then I guess for staff, for the penalty fee, is it like, do we give notices before the fee is sent out, or how does that work?
So you're talking about administrative citations.
Yes.
We do typically, that's handled by code enforcement, obviously. We do typically have warnings. We have someone from code enforcement here that could speak to that if you want some additional information. Oscar, do you want to come up real quick and just address that? But before we get to that, you also mentioned the insurance.
Yes.
I just wanted to note that the insurance we put in here was what was recommended by ICRMA, our insurance pool. But we can go back and see if we can reduce that. I think we put in it. It was $2 million in the aggregate, but it was $1 million for one occurrence. So I could go back and see if we can reduce that. It sounds like you may want to, and if you do, after we're concluded, direct me to do that. But that's where those numbers came from. It actually came from ICRMA. So just to clarify that. Go ahead, Oscar.
Good evening. Regarding the notices, yeah, first they will be notified. We actually got in contact with a representative from Airbnb who said that to contact them if there's a property that's not in compliance with city code, not just if this ordinance were to pass, not this ordinance, but property maintenance, building codes, to contact them, and they will also reach out to the property owners as well to make sure that they come into compliance with the city. So we've at least been able to get in contact with Airbnb, who's willing to assist us with any compliance and any enforcement of any code.
Mr. Chair, I think the audience may be concerned that the penalty was harsh, imprisonment and whatnot. I think what we're trying to say is there's a process to get to that point, and it starts with, code enforcement, initiating administrative citations, maybe even warnings. I don't know, but it's not an immediate, punishment that goes into effect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you recall from a prior study session that we talked about the different tools for code enforcement. So we have the admin sites, we have criminal penalties, but those aren't always used. There's discretion on the part of the city attorney, whether you do infractions or misdemeanors, and also discretion on the part of code enforcement. They don't necessarily have to go immediately to criminal prosecution. So that also is something to understand.
Okay.
Oh, and then there was also a question about if we're allowing it for apartments. We had in the proposed code there we're not allowing it short-term rental for apartment buildings. And that was it.
Juan, do you want to?
On.
Yes, just a couple of questions. The couple of the speakers mentioned item F, which is a requirement for identifying the home address of the person booking. Is that something that, if there's an incident that happens, is there a way that the police or the code enforcement can get a hold of the responsible party without them having to list this on or provide it to the city initially?
Airbnb, probably.
So we would contact the property owner first, since they're the ones who are responsible for any issues that occur on a property that is rented as a short-term rental. So that would be our first point of contact. When we did speak to Airbnb, they do have a way in which we can obtain information and anonymous information in terms of how many nights people are staying, the average host age, the typical income, those sorts of things. They have stats that we can obtain. The reason for that portion of the code too was to ensure that we knew how many days an STR was being utilized in a property for purposes of collecting the TOT. We can certainly amend that portion of the code so that we can contact the property owner first as our first point of contact.
Okay.
Did that answer?
Yes, it does, and I think that I would propose that
Option.
at the
Yeah.
end. At the end.
That's a
agree.
good idea.
Just to clarify, we're talking about F, the logbook.
The logbook,
the
the
logbook,
address.
okay.
Yes, the address of the,
And then let's see I think my fellow commissioner already mentioned all the other items. Just real quick, I would like to say that a lot of speakers mentioned about the problem of homelessness and affordability of housing, and so the more Airbnb there is in the city, the less available rentals, long-term rentals there is in housing stock. And when there's less availability in housing stock, the prices go up for rent. So that means that less people could afford to rent that, and that equals potentially more families that are homeless and individuals that become homeless. So we're trying, I think with the ordinance that we have now, we're trying to strike a good balance between providing, keeping the rights of the community, of the residents, and also allowing our city to be a good city that provides a good balance of housing for moderate, low income, and now even upper levels of rental and housing. So that's the idea.
correct.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'd just like to reiterate what Ms. Maharik said, that
this is an amendment to the Hawthorne Municipal Code to allow for this to happen. I know that some people spoke in a way where they thought that we're prohibiting it. We're actually allowing it with regulations. And as she said, not a lot of cities are adopting this right now. My concerns are very similar to my fellow commissioners. If I were to recommend approval today, I would do it with the recommendation of reducing the 2 million to 1 million, and with looking into the possibility of not getting the address if there were a way to obtain it any other way, either from the resident or Airbnb, if there were any legal items. And the last thing that I'm going to say is, I mean, my position here as a planning commissioner is to serve the city and its people. So when I see a full house like this and I see the certain way that they want things to go, that's where my heart would go. So I hope that it can be approved with the revisions. And again, we're going to revisit this in a year. If there are things that we can be a little bit more lenient with because it worked, or maybe sometimes the opposite, maybe there were abuses. So we're going to revisit this in a year and see if there are any changes that we can make or add, and they can always be done. So that's my humble recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. I really agree with my fellow commissioners, and I would really like to direct our attorney to have that looked into about dropping that insurance, or because I think that's very important. You know, if you can't afford insurance, and you can't do much about with having the property, and also this the home address thing. I think if there's a way it can be done easier or better without having to have that information, I think we should. Okay, does any of my fellow commissioners have any final comments on this item or questions from staff? Okay. Okay, and then I formally close the public hearing on the item. Call on my fellow commissioners for a vote on this item. Do I have a motion?
I would have a motion with the revisions. The revision of minimizing the insurance from 2 million to 1 million, and not having it a must that they must provide the address of the tenant. And was there anything else that we? No.
I was going to note that you have an option. You could either approve it with the changes that you just directed, or you can ask us to bring it back. It's your option. But as long as we're clear about what we're revising, I can do that, and then we can move this forward so that it can go to the next step.
That would be up to my fellow commissioners. I mean, I can't. Yeah, I mean,
but that's an option. You can do either.
I'm okay with approving it with the conditions.
I am too.
So am I.
Okay. So was there a second? And then I can help with.
I'll second that.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the recommendation to the city council, but with the changes to be reduction of the insurance from 2 million to 1 million, and possibly even the 1 million to lower, or.
I mean, if they said that Airbnb does offer the 1 million, so it seems to be standard.
Okay, so we can keep it at 1 million,
Yes.
no more than 1 million. And with the deletion of home address from section,
I believe it was F.
It was F from 17.74060. Yeah, F, remove home address. And I would actually like a little bit of direction from you. We did receive some communication from Airbnb. Unfortunately, it came in so late that I did not have an opportunity to fully research an issue that they brought up regarding the information that's requested of hosting platforms of folks like Airbnb and HomeAway. What I'd like to have you direct me to do is to research that, and if the requirements that are contained here cannot be lawfully implemented, we request them to give us certain information. They want to only give us anonymous information and data information. If I cannot, if my understanding is that I can get the information that I want, if it turns out that I cannot, I'm going to just go ahead and put there that they have to provide data instead. So I just want to be able to do that as part of the motion to change it. If I can, I will leave it alone, and if I need to change it, I will change it just to that. And if you look in the letter that was provided by Airbnb, you can see exactly what they were talking about.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. I mean, if you can add that, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Okay.
That's it.
And there a second?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a
Second by
second,
me.
as long as they agree to that amendment, further amendment.
I do.
Okay.
We
Mr.
agree.
Secretary, call for
Great.
the vote.
Go ahead, yeah.
Chairperson Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chair El Shanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caraveo,
Yes.
Commissioner Richard is absent. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Thank you.
So, just for the benefit of the public, so you understand what the process is. So the Planning Commission recommended that this ordinance go to the City Council. So this will be a public hearing again at the City Council. They'll have a first reading, so there will be one meeting, and then there will be a second reading, another meeting at City Council level. And if they approve it, then the ordinance would become effective 30 days later. So there's still a few more steps that have to take place, but that's the process. And again, if anybody has any questions about anything, please feel free to contact staff, the planning department, and we're happy to help you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving on. There are no new public hearings. So we will recess the Planning Commission, call back to order the Airport Zoning Commission. Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar, there are no items. Airport Zoning Commission new continued public hearings, we have no items. So now we'll call back to order the Planning Commission concurrently with the Airport Zoning Commission. Are there any administrative items? There's none, right? Commissioner reports, please. Start with you.
None on my part. Thank you.
I just wanted to say Happy New Year to everybody. Number two, I had a question for staff. Are we working on an ordinance for the ADUs?
Yes, we are working on the ordinance for ADUs
Okay.
and junior ADUs as well.
Okay. And then while updating the applications.
Yes, we're updating the applications as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, and then it's not for planning, but more for like public works. I noticed that on 118th Street, that a lot of people are kind of diverting from Imperial and using 118th Street between Inglewood and Felton. And it's like a lot of traffic and people speeding down that street. This is like during the afternoon rush. So I was trying to see if maybe there could be something to install, maybe some like speed humps or something like that. If you guys could talk to Public Works about that.
We will.
I'll speak with the Public Works Director.
Okay. Let's see. I also wanted to congratulate Phi Beta Sigma for 106 years of service. Also wanted to congratulate Zeta Phi Beta sorority for their 100-year will be tomorrow. They're a sorority that embodies community consciousness and action-oriented. And then I also wanted to wish everybody a happy Martin Luther King Day. And if you guys have Monday off, make sure to enjoy with your families. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's really nice to sit up here and see a lot of citizens in the audience. Usually we don't have very many. And so thank you again very much. And I hope everybody had a very, very wonderful holiday. And now we're going to go into the year 2020. The theme for this year will be the year of vision. You understand? Vision 2020?
Yes.
It didn't work. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much.
It worked once you explained it.
So if there's nothing further from the commissioners, the meeting will be adjourned at 7:05. And thank you very much for being here.
Gavel.
Oh, I'm I'm sorry. I have to tell them to turn it off.
Do they still?